What's up, friends? Welcome into another episode of Tables, Tailgates, and Top Loaders. I'm your host, TB, aka Tim Beardsley, and I am so happy to have you all aboard for this very crazy episode. This is episode 10. Episode 10 of the 3 Ts. It's been quite the ride so far. Now, when I started this whole thing out, my goal was to have some fun. But one of the first goals I had was to get to episode 10 because when I was doing research, preparing to put this podcast together, I was told that only 10% of podcasts actually make it to episode 10, and here we are. So we have achieved great success. Great success. But that's the good news. The bad news is this is not the episode that I had envisioned doing for episode 10. I wanted to come on here and do some fun stuff, some themed topics surrounding the number 10 with wrestling and Bills and some hobby talk. But unfortunately, with the way this week went, I'm not going to get to do that this week. And so this episode's going to be a little different. We're just going to talk for the majority of it. I'll give you a little peek behind the curtain, but normally when I sit down to prepare for the show, I take a lot of time. I do some research. I start by taking some notes and doing a general outline, and then get a little more detailed and fill in some of the blanks. So I kind of try to make it seem like I know what the heck I'm doing here. But there's no way around it. This week was absolute crap. Now, we started on the 20th, which was last Sunday. Obviously, we had the death of Malcolm Jamal Warner. Being a kid of the 80s, The Cosby Show was huge. So that one was a little bit of a shock. And then 2 days later, we had the icon, Ozzy Osbourne. He passed away on Tuesday, which is a huge hit to the music industry, to the world, to the country. Just rock and roll legend. Rock and roll legend influenced so many people in so many ways with music and whatnot. And so the beginning of the week sucked. And I always worry when you see some of these celebrity passings or famous people passing, prominent people, because, the idea that bad things come in threes. It always seems to happen that way. So after I call him Theo from The Cosby Show because I love that show. That was a great show when I was a kid. But after Theo and Ozzy had passed, it's kind of sitting in the back of your mind like, well, what's the next shoe to drop? So Thursday comes. I am prepping for the show. I'm writing notes. I'm putting together an outline of what I want to talk about, some fun segments I want to do. And just around midday, probably a little before lunch, my phone starts blowing up. I'm getting texts from my kids and my wife, and I happen to check them all right around the same time. And they all say the same thing. Hulk Hogan died. And it kind of changed my preparation for the show completely. Kind of threw everything out the window. The prep for the show it definitely is going to be and was a lot different. Now, I have some things, some points, some notes that I have taken because I just want to make sure I don't forget anything. But for the most part, this is just going to be me talking about my childhood and about memories and about what this whole thing means. Now, a couple things before we dive in. I get some of the controversy and the animosity and the hatred and the anger and all that stuff that has unfortunately circled around Hulk Hogan and his life for probably the last 14 plus years. I have chosen as a host of this show to not talk about any of that. And you may think that's right or wrong, but it is what it is. We are all flawed individuals, and that is not what I want to focus on today. When I started with this podcast, if you go all the way back to the very first episode, number one, I wanted to do this to have fun. Number two, I wanted to do this because these 3 hobbies, so card collecting, the Buffalo Bills, and professional wrestling, these hobbies have meant the world to me in my 46 years on Earth. I started this podcast in order to talk about them, and one of the things that I brought up in the first episode was how do these awesome hobbies, how do these awesome parts of our lives make us feel? And so, while yes, I do tend to, or I can be critical of certain things that I see in the 3 aspects of this podcast, today I'm going to choose to look at this man from the lens of a kid growing up in the 80s and the 90s and take that perspective. Maybe you can understand, maybe you can't. It is what it is. So we're just going to start talking. Like I said, I have some notes that I took, but I'm not sure where this is going to go. But hopefully this is therapeutic for me. As the day went on Thursday, I found myself getting more upset about the whole thing and really thinking into the whole situation, and a lot of memories came up. And that's tough, right? Because what I like to do on the show, I like to take deep dives into things from my childhood, nostalgia trips, right? I talk about getting in the DeLorean and going back to certain moments in time. And in previous episodes, I've already talked about huge matches involving Hulk Hogan and from, early WrestleManias. Just last episode, I talked about SummerSlam 88, which was the Mega Bucks versus the Mega Powers. And I literally just watched that match. It's crazy. When I'm feeling nostalgic or when I feel like I need to reconnect with the world of professional wrestling, I don't go back to very many 2000 matches, matches post 2002, 2003. Like I know The Rock and Stone Cold and all those guys, like that was a huge part of being a fan, but I don't go back and rewatch a lot of that stuff. If I go back to rewatch something just to kind of unplug and to reconnect with this awesome part of me, it's always the late 80s, early 90s stuff. I go throw on a Hulk Hogan match. I go watch Macho Man. I go watch Ultimate Warrior. Wrestling-wise, are these guys better than those in the early 2000s? Are they better than the John Cenas? Are they better than the Roman Reigns? Look, we can talk about work rate. We can talk about all this stuff, but the thing that puts the biggest smile on my face is going back and watching these matches from my childhood. So that's what we're gonna dive into. It's crazy. So Thursday comes, I get the text, Hulk Hogan passes away, and there's just a lot to unpack there. A lot to unpack, a lot to dive into. How does it make you feel? Like I talk about that all the time. How does this stuff make you feel? And to hear that news, politics and all the nonsense aside, how did it make me feel when I heard Hulk Hogan passed away? It's very simple. This iconic wrestler, Hulk Hogan, was such a huge part of my childhood. Such a huge part of my childhood. And to get that news and to allow the floodgates of being 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old open and have these memories and these feelings and these emotions come back, it's not like anything else you can experience. It sucked. Getting this news just flat out sucked. And the more I dove into it, the more I wanted to remember certain moments, certain matches, certain points. It's so weird to talk about. But this man was such a huge part and is, if I'm being completely honest, he is the reason I love professional wrestling. There's really no way around it. So while the passing of Ozzy Osbourne was a huge impact on so many people, and I'm not going to downplay or raise up the importance of one versus the other, he was a huge influence on rock, on heavy metal, on the music industry as a whole, and he did so many things iconic in his own right. But here's the thing. Here's the difference when you compare these two cultural icons. If you take Ozzy out of the world of rock and roll still exists. It's different. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he didn't have and leave a huge footprint and wasn't an icon and paved the way and changed things for the better. I truly believe that. If you don't believe me, just go watch his last concert with all these musicians and all these people coming together to celebrate the life of him. And it was awesome. Just great. I'm so glad that everyone got that opportunity. But if you go back and you look at Hulk Hogan and his impact and importance on the future of wrestling, the future of professional wrestling after he came on the scene, if you remove Hulk Hogan from the equation, the current product, what we enjoy today and participate in today and consume today doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. And now there's the argument for, well, who was really responsible for Hulk Hogan and the whole Hulkamania? Was it Hulk? Was it Vince? Was it a combo of both? It doesn't matter. The fact is he is such a huge part of that equation. If you take him away, wrestling today doesn't exist. And I don't mean that it doesn't happen, like nothing happens. It's just not, it's not the same. Because what this man did was he redefined what it meant to be a professional wrestler. WrestleMania. I mean, the idea of WrestleMania, we go back to 1985, first WrestleMania. Now, WrestleMania really wasn't huge until 2 years later. But you had the first WrestleMania, which is revolutionary. You're holding a huge event, Madison Square Garden. I mean, you have celebrities coming out of the woodwork. That you go back and watch WrestleMania 1. The main event in the very first WrestleMania is a tag team match. And Hulk Hogan, your good guy, is tagging with Mr. T, who was also at the time so culturally relevant. He was huge in the world of entertainment. So to pair him up with Hulk Hogan in the main event of this brand new concept called WrestleMania, in which they're fighting Paul Orndorff and Rowdy Roddy Piper, it was just groundbreaking. Now, is WrestleMania 1 good? Like, that's a whole nother question. If you go back and watch that, it's very difficult to sit through WrestleMania 1, but it's a spectacle, and you get all these other things happening to kind of pave the way for, and I hate this term, but to pave the way for the sports entertainment that people call it today. So WrestleMania 1 happens in 1985. It's a big success. And then they go on a year later in 1986. Who's the headliner of WrestleMania 2? It's Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy in a steel cage match. Now, I'm only 7 years old at the time, so I don't remember watching this. I have since obviously seen WrestleMania 2 numerous times. It's kind of a mess. They are putting together this show from 3 separate locations. You have Chicago, New York, and LA, and it's just a jumbled, convoluted mess. So let's be honest. But they're still working the kinks out, right? So 1 and 2 are kind of just there, and they're kind of slowly evolving. And then 3 hits. I'm 8 years old, 1987, WrestleMania 3, and this is considered by so many people to be the moment that redefined what professional wrestling is. And it's almost like a mark in the sand of cultural importance, cultural relevance moving forward. You have two of the huge, most well-known superstars, Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan. Now, this is the main event, Pontiac Silverdome, Detroit. The numbers are crazy, right? They'll tell you there's 90,000 people. No, that's nonsense. There weren't that many people, but the idea still stands that this match was super important. Now, at the point in Andre's career, Andre could barely work this match. It's not that great of a match, but the fact that you see a body slam, Hulk Hogan picks up Andre the Giant, slams him. That moment right there redefined what professional wrestling was. And I've talked about this before. I've seen that match probably 50, 60 times at this point in my life. But when I was 8, I don't have a memory of watching this live. What I was doing when I was 8 years old, I don't know, but I can't say that I saw this show as it was happening. And then you fast forward, WrestleMania 4. WrestleMania 4 is the first time that Hulk Hogan is not in the main event of a WrestleMania, but yet he's still in the main event of WrestleMania. There's a whole convoluted mess happening in which prior to this, Hogan was the champ and he lost due to a ref. It was the Hebner, the twin Hebner fiasco, and Andre beat him thanks to this nefarious ref, and then he immediately hands the belt to Ted DiBiase. And anyway, WrestleMania 4 is essentially a huge tournament leading up to Macho Man fighting Ted DiBiase for the title. I just rewatched this match too, so it's crazy that this stuff happens. And I don't know, the old school stuff I love going back to, even if it's a match here, a match there. You don't need to sit through a 2.5 hour, 3 hour pay-per-view, but you can go back and say, hey, remember this match? And you pop it on and you're like, that was awesome. But so main event, WrestleMania 4, you have Macho Man with Miss Elizabeth, and at some point he can't overcome the odds because Ted DiBiase is there with Andre the Giant in his corner, and every time Macho Man gets rolling, there's some shenanigans happening. And so finally, Macho Man tells Elizabeth, hey, you see him like whispering and pointing to her, and you see Miss Elizabeth go off back behind the curtain, and 2 minutes later she comes out, and who does she bring with her? It's none other than Hulk Hogan. And so Hulk Hogan comes down. The place goes absolutely crazy. He gets a steel chair and literally sits himself right next to ringside. And anytime then, now that Andre wants to get involved, Hogan's there. And which is funny. There's a point in the match where the refs turn, the ref's distracted. Hulk Hogan jumps in the ring and hits Ted DiBiase on the back with a chair. Is that actually a good guy move? Probably not. But needless to say, right after that, Macho Man hits a diving elbow from the top turnbuckle, and he is your new champion. Post-match, Macho Man, who in his own right is establishing himself, or had already established himself, as one of the most important wrestlers in all of professional wrestling. But look at that match in the context of what it is. He wins the match. He's your new champion. But who is right there? Who helped him to get the belt? It's none other than Hulk Hogan. The match ends. They're celebrating, and it's Randy, it's Hulk, and it's Miss Elizabeth. And those three become the most important good guy faces for the next year, because they establish the Mega Powers. And the Mega Powers, as a kid, this is like, holy cow, this is like your superheroes. You know, we look at the Avengers today. It's like, oh, Thor and Iron Man, they're teaming up with Captain America, and this is what it was in 1989. The Mega Powers is essentially my Avengers when I'm 10 years old. And so they start this super long story in which jealousy is involved and animosity is involved, and what starts as best friends, and they're all in it together to kind of thwart off the evil bad guys led by DiBiase and Andre the Giant and Bobby Heenan, and it slowly starts to unravel. And it all leads up to 1989 WrestleMania 5. And this is where I clearly remember watching this as a kid. If you told me, hey, where did your fandom, what match do you actually remember seeing as it was happening? It's WrestleMania 5. I was 10. Mega Powers explode. This was crazy, because the whole story involving Miss Elizabeth and Macho Man and Hulk, it was told brilliantly, effectively, and it was just awesome. And so these two fight in the main event of WrestleMania 5. As a kid, you're watching this, and this is what it meant to feel something as a kid. So the Mega Powers explode. And then, as this is happening in the background, you had the Ultimate Warrior slowly rising through the ranks. He was doing all kinds of crazy stuff. The Ultimate Warrior, I talked about him in the SummerSlam 88 match against the Honky Tonk Man. I talked about that match last week, and how as a kid, when you're 8, 9, 10 years old and you're seeing these characters, Ultimate Warrior especially, with the way they are presented, the way they wrestle, the way they talk, everything, the whole package. He's slowly ascending up the ranks, and Hulk Hogan's already at the top. He's established himself as the top guy. And then flash forward to 1990, WrestleMania 6 now. So we're 6 years into this WrestleMania thing, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, led by Hulk Hogan each and every year. Regardless of whether he was wrestling in the main event, he's there. Right? So 1990, WrestleMania 6, this is the match I go back and watch probably more than any other match. Because for me, this is the moment in my childhood when I was like, oh my God, I don't even know who to root for. Because when Ultimate Warrior hits the scene, I was like, this is craziness. This guy is ridiculous. I loved Hogan, and it felt bad for me to root for Warrior, because I'm like, well, am I supposed to be rooting for both of these guys? But they're amazing. And so here we go. WrestleMania 6 main event, Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior, title versus title match. Winner take all. Ultimate Warrior is your Intercontinental Champion. Hulk Hogan is your heavyweight champion, your world champion. And these two are fighting, and only one can win. And as a kid, you're like, well, I don't know who the heck I'm supposed to want to win this. And this is the match. This is the match I keep coming back to. And the reason all these other wrestlers were so good, or deemed to be so good, is because of Hulk Hogan's presence. He elevated everybody with his storytelling and with his promos. And was he the best technical wrestler? I don't even want to get into that. Yeah, I get it. Other guys would come along who were far superior with work rate and ability and all that stuff. That's not the point. Work rate did not put WrestleMania on the map. Work rate did not elevate the WWF at the time into where it started to where it ended up. I understand it became an important factor, but when you're 8, 9, 10 years old, you don't give a crap about work rate. You don't give a crap what moves they know and what their move set is and all this other crap. You wanted to see these larger than life characters. You wanted to see them go through conflict and you wanted to see them beat the bad guy. You wanted to see them overcome adversity. And so WrestleMania 6 was it. I mean, like this was the match. 2 of my absolute favorites. Title versus title, Toronto Skydome. Now, the Skydome part, this is going to come back into play 12 years later, and we'll get to that. But so if you look at the rise of Hulk Hogan, you look at the rise of the WWF, you look at the rise of Hulkamania, who was that designed for? It was designed for me. And this is the part that I think is what makes me sad about the fact that he passed away. Because when I look back on this window of time, and we can call it, I mean, it's safe to say that this is like a 5-6 year window where the rise of Hulkamania takes place. This is my wheelhouse. And I am exactly the target demographic that the WWF is trying to reach. It's me. What do they do? What's going on outside of your television shows and your pay-per-views? What's going on outside of it? Well, they're bringing out cartoons. So now Hulk Hogan and some of these other guys are involved in cartoon programming. They're in commercials. They're doing spots for all sorts of products that they're pushing now. These guys are suddenly, and specifically Hulk Hogan, he's everywhere. At the time in the late 80s, he has to be one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. On the planet. And that cannot be undersold, right? The fact that Hulk Hogan is in movies, he's in cartoons, he has toys that come out, and the toy line alone, right? It's crazy the timing of this whole thing. My wife and I go to a little small town, probably about 45 minutes east outside of Philly, a little town called Quakertown, PA, and it's this old antique shop run by one of the coolest guys you'll ever meet. It's called Rinky Dinks Antiques. And anyway, a couple weeks ago we're there, and he knew I was a huge wrestling fan. I had bought some old wrestling action figures from him. I'm not talking like ones, I'm talking old ones, like some of the first ones. Guys like Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Virgil and $1 Million Man and like Andre the Giant. And so he had put all these things aside, and then he finds a Hulk Hogan collection. And in this collection, it's an action figure that you put on your finger. If you guys remember any of these are crazy. Like you could make them fight by almost attaching them to one of your fingers and then finger puppets, but I don't know what they were called back then. But that, and I had a color form. If you guys know what color forms is, like most of you probably have never heard of color forms, but they're essentially reusable stickers, almost like magnets that you put on these background panels, and you can make scenes play out in front of you. Well, on the cover of this, it's Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan on the color form. But the prize of the lot is a wrestling buddy from Mattel. Actually, was it Mattel? No, I don't think it was Mattel. I think it was Tonka. I think things came out around 1990. These were called Wrestling Buddies. If you haven't seen them, these are essentially pillows, and they did a series, and I think it was 5 people. It was like Randy, Macho Man, it was Hulk Hogan, it was Ultimate Warrior, and 2 others. I'd have to look it up, but these were essentially pillows that were cut out in the shapes of wrestlers, and they were probably no bigger than 1.5 feet tall by 1 foot wide, and they had colors, and they looked, the color scheme matched the wrestler, and the idea was the kids would buy them and they could practice wrestling moves on them at home. And I remember having one when I was a kid, and so he had a wrestling buddy, and I'm like, hell yeah, I want this. Absolutely, I want this. So I bought that. I bought the action figures. Oh, another action figure he had, which is absolutely crazy to me. It's Hulk Hogan in the white trunks, and it's him as Thunderlips from Rocky 3. Now, I don't talk too much about movies on this podcast, but the Rocky series is up there on list of my all-time favorite movies. Rocky 1 is, I consider the original Rocky, it's probably in my top 3 movies of all time, if it's not number 1. But Rocky 3, where Rocky Balboa fights Mr. T, and at some point, this is 1982, so obviously I'm only 3. I did not see this movie when it came out, right? But I owned these movies on VHS. I own them on DVD. I have seen these movies so many times. Rocky 3 is probably one of my favorites after the original. Hulk Hogan is in this movie as a character by the name of Thunderlips, and they have a charity event in which Rocky Balboa fights Thunderlips. And this scene, it's awesome. It's just so fun. Well, he had a action figure of Hulk Hogan as Thunderlips from Rocky 3. Hell yeah, I'm going to buy that. Right? So now I have all these ancient action figures and a Hulk Hogan wrestling buddy. And then a few weeks later, this news breaks. Like I said, the timing of this stuff is it's just crazy. When I say cultural phenomenon, it can't be understated how big this was. You can compare it to, is it crazy to say the Beatles? I don't know. I wasn't around for when the Beatles were huge, but the Beatles were a global cultural phenomenon in the same way that Elvis was before them and Michael Jackson was after them. But Hulk Hogan, I'm not going to put him on the same level as those, but it can't be far off. It can't be far off, people. He was huge. He's in movies. He's on your TV, not just for wrestling, but for cartoons and for commercials. And he's got toy lines. And little kids like me are using these pillows to instead of slamming their brothers and sisters and hurting people, they're now being able to practice moves on their beds or floors or wherever the hell they're doing it, using these awesome wrestling buddies. So I'll tell you what, how far it even went for me. Later on in life, I get a cat. What do I name the cat? I name the cat Hogan. I name a cat Hogan because of what this man meant to me as a kid. He had such lasting impact on me as a kid that I thought that was a badass name. So I want to name my cat after the immortal Hulk Hogan. It's just crazy to me. I don't think it can be understated how important Hulk Hogan was to really skyrocketing the WWF into the next stratosphere. It was gaining steam. It was popular. But when WrestleMania 3 is over and it's the body slam heard around the world, it just takes off to a whole nother level. WrestleMania 3, WrestleMania 5, WrestleMania 6 against the Warrior. And then at that time, things kind of take a little bit of a turn. I think, 6 years, 7 years is a long time for someone to be riding that peak of the wave. And so I think people had started to kind of get tired of it, because now, right after that, you have 1991, WrestleMania 7, he fights Sergeant Slaughter. A lot of things culturally are going on in the world. We're overseas, the United States is overseas, and there's a lot of political parallels that your wrestling programs are now running with your political events and your cultural events. And so I'm not sure if people were really okay with that. WrestleMania 7 was a bit of a chore. Obviously, we wanted him to beat Sergeant Slaughter, but I just think that there were so many other things going on in the world and it's funny because that was Bills fans. That was the Bills Super Bowl, wide right. So what a time. What a time to be alive as a 11-year-old or 12-year-old, whatever the heck I was at the time. You got Sergeant Slaughter versus Hulk Hogan. Our country's at war. You're learning all about this at school. And then your favorite team loses in the last seconds of the Super Bowl. Great. Awesome. Yeah. Love to go back there. What a mess that was. Anyway, he's everywhere, and he's got his catchphrases. He's got his gear. He's got the theme song. The theme song alone, the real American theme song, I can put this song on today, and it's still a banger. This song is awesome. When it comes crashing down and it hurts inside, that's going to be the name of this podcast. I just decided, but like that, you hear that guitar riff, and it's on. That the entire mode and mood of the show, of whatever you're watching, it's changing, because here comes Hulk Hogan, and he's going to do something cool with his 24-inch pythons and his, the headband, the gear, the red and yellow. I never liked red and yellow, but to see red and yellow on this guy, he's 6'7", he's 300 pounds, he's moving around like crazy, like he's dropping leg drop after leg drop. Was he a good wrestler? We already discussed this. He's probably not the greatest, but he wasn't the worst, because if you watched late 80s wrestling, there was guys a hell of a lot worse than Hulk Hogan. But like I said, he elevated these other guys and made everyone else so much more important. That's how big Hogan was. But to say your prayers, take your vitamins, those things, what you gonna do, brother? And the catchphrases, those still are said today. Now everyone needs a catchphrase. Now it's like you're not at the top unless you have some sort of catchphrase, because it's, I'll take this from The Rock. It's sing along with The Rock. You remember when that was happening? But Hogan started this because he found these phrases that were working, and he kept repeating them over and over again. And it was a way to market himself and the product and the company, and just a huge success. And to downplay his importance, if everyone likes to do their Mount Rushmores, it's him. And there's really no one else. Now, some will argue Ric Flair. I get it. Ric Flair was great as well. But to me, we don't have what we have today if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan. In my opinion, an absolute fact. And then as I'm trying to think back through what I want to talk about, and I hit on some of the matches, like I said, after WrestleMania 6 versus The Warrior, I think that was the peak. I think that was the peak of Hulkamania, because he loses this match, Warrior wins, and things seem to change a little bit. So Warrior's your champ. Now, obviously, Hogan gets it back. He goes on the feud with, a lot of guys at that point. Yokozuna comes into the picture. He's fighting Yokozuna. He's fighting Sergeant Slaughter. These are fine feuds, but they just don't match up to his Andre, his Macho Man, and his Warrior feuds. And so things seem to die down a little bit. Then he goes away. He goes to join WCW. And I'll be completely honest with you. I was not a WCW kid. I was WWF all the way. I felt like betraying these superheroes if I were to turn on WCW. I knew what was happening because I had friends that would watch it, but he goes to WCW and wrestles there for a couple of years, still under the normal good guy moniker, right? And then he, again, changes the industry. He changes the industry 10 years later in 1996. WCW Bash at the Beach, one of the most iconic last, 25, 30 minutes of a pay-per-view in the history of professional wrestling. You have Scott Hall, you have Kevin Nash, and they're running amok, and they've been advertising a mystery third member to join their faction, and there's a big schmoz at the end of this Bash at the Beach, and here comes Hogan, and you think he's gonna square up and go against Nash and Hall, and he shocks the world and joins them and creates he does two things. He creates one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic, stables in the history of professional wrestling, creating the NWO, and he turns from one of the greatest baby faces of all time into one of the greatest heels of all time. And I can't say that's ever been duplicated. We've been waiting for 20 years for John Cena to do it. We knew he just did it earlier this year, February. He turned into a heel, what's the first thing you think of when John Cena turned? You thought of Hulk Hogan turning into Hollywood Hogan. And then gone are the red and yellow. Now he's rocking the white and black with he's dyeing his beard. You want to talk about reinventing yourself into a way that just shakes the industry. This single move put WCW ahead of WWF. The creation of the NWO and turning Hogan into a bad guy elevated the WCW into another stratosphere, just like he had done, what is it at this point, 8 years earlier with what he had done in WWF. He took WCW, which was fine. They were fine, but they were the Monday Night Wars, and they're fighting, Ted Turner's fighting Vince McMahon, trying to gain the upper hand. And these two companies are duking it out. And Hogan turning into a bad guy, creating the NWO is one of the greatest creations ever. And again, flips the industry on its head because no one saw this coming. No one. Go back and watch the end of Bash at the Beach. It's insane. Look at the ring at the end of that pay-per-view and tell me those fans aren't feeling something? I don't know what to tell you. I wasn't a WCW guy, but looking back at that, I'm like, holy crap. This is crazy. And because of that, they went on a run and started crushing the WWF because of Hulk Hogan. So anyone that wants to sit here and tell me he's not the guy and everyone else is below him, you're wrong. You're just wrong. And again, it's not just about work rate. It's not just about, well, how many moves can he do? It's not just about all this other crap. It's about what are you bringing to the table? The whole package. How are you talking? What impact are you having on other wrestlers? How are you elevating other people? How are you helping your product? What are you doing to lift your company? What are you doing to get it through dark days? What are you doing to continue it at its peak. This was the guy. This was the freaking guy. I don't know, man. And then, oh man. Then 2002 hits. We didn't even talk about this. 2002. We're at WrestleMania 18, back at Toronto Skydome. And Hogan had come back to the WWF. And they were setting up quite a match. Y'all remember this one? It's The Rock versus Hulk Hogan. Toronto Skydome, WrestleMania 18. Icon versus icon is the way they built this. And this match is, I think it's the third to last match on the card. Well, they could have turned the program off because I know Triple H was coming, and I got to be honest with you. Triple H was not liked by me at this part of my wrestling career. Fandom, my wrestling fandom. I couldn't stand Triple H. Looking back, I appreciate what he did, but there was a section of time when I hated Triple H because I thought he was pushed to the moon and he was the focus, and it was all garbage as far as I'm concerned. But I think your main event there is Chris Jericho versus Triple H. But as far as I'm concerned, Hogan versus Rock, go back and watch this match. Tell me that the people in Toronto Skydome are not feeling something. Hogan comes in as the bad guy in this match. Hulk Hogan's the bad guy. He should be hated. By the end of this match, every single person in Skydome is rooting for Hulk Hogan. Watch this match. I've seen this match so many times. It's one of the most important matches you can watch because this is what my podcast is about. What are we feeling? Why do we do these things? Why do we watch these shows? Why do we invest in these characters? Why do we participate and go to these events? It's for this moment right here. WrestleMania 18, Hogan versus Rock. This is the moment. This is what it's about as a wrestling fan. Watch that match, put yourself, and now I'm obviously much older at this time, right? So I'm 23 years old. So I get it. Like, they're no longer superheroes to me, but it's still fun, right? And I'm still feeling something watching this match at 23 years old. The match is awesome. I can never get tired of watching that match. Now you want to tell me, well, there's no great, awesome move sets and all this. It doesn't matter. Look at what is actually happening during this match and tell me this match doesn't have extreme significance in the history of professional wrestling. And who's at the forefront? Hulk Hogan. So you put it all together and yeah, it's tough. And maybe this podcast has turned into me rambling on, but there's a lot I had to talk about and just feel with you all. Because that's what I've asked you from the beginning. Come on this journey with me and feel something with me. We want to talk about things that make us feel some way. And this week just flat out sucked because it made me feel something again. You know, if you've grown up in the 80s and the early 90s as a kid, you've seen a lot of these guys unfortunately pass away. Many of them much too soon. Many of them. And it's devastating. I still look back at the day Warrior passed away. I still go back and watch his speech on Monday Night Raw. And it's eerie to think about that. He came out to the ring on Monday Night Raw and gives this crazy speech, almost asking for forgiveness or however you want to interpret that speech. It was a great speech. And Warrior's another guy that had his own demons. And that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But again, here is someone that at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I looked up to like, holy cow. And so now I'm seeing this, you know, as a grown man, I'm watching this other grown man talk about the things he talked about in that Monday Night Raw promo. And then not even, 24, 48 hours later, he's no longer with us. So that one hurt. And then other guys, Scott Hall, Mr. Perfect. I mean, the list of 80s wrestlers and managers and everybody it was crazy watching SummerSlam 88 and going through the roster and realizing how many of those guys are not with us anymore. That's the tough part of the nostalgia if you want to get dark with it. But most of these guys don't get to live to be 71 like Hulk Hogan. So it's awesome that he was able to live that long. Unfortunately, like I said, the last 14 years were filled with a lot of demons. And to be able to separate that from what he brought to the table and what he brought to who the target audience was at the time, which is me, that's what I was trying to do here today. At the end of the day, it's supposed to make you feel something. When I'm a kid in the 80s and the early 90s, wrestling was Hulk Hogan. I would not be the fan I am today without him. And so, yeah, losing him on Thursday, it made me feel something all right. So I wanted to share that with you all. Maybe it was too long. Maybe it was me rambling on and on, but I think it was a necessary podcast. I had other things in the other teas. I had stuff written out, talk about the Bills and talk about cards, and we're going to save that for another episode because I think it's important and I think he deserves it. Right or wrong, whatever you think, doesn't matter. I think he deserves to have this whole podcast. And yeah, so Hulk Hogan, thank you for your contributions to my childhood. Thank you for turning me into a huge lifelong wrestling fan. I would not be here loving this show, loving this product, I wouldn't be here loving professional wrestling today if it wasn't for you and what you brought to the table to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old me. It can't be understated. I'm going to miss the hell out of you. It's going to be a lot harder going back and watching these matches now, but I'm going to keep saying my prayers and taking my vitamins and hulking up and working on my 24-inch pythons. And hopefully, if y'all get that nostalgia feeling, go back and watch some of these matches, whether it's WrestleMania 3, WrestleMania 5, WrestleMania 6, or WrestleMania 18. I encourage you all, go back and watch these because these are timestamps on the historic scale that is professional wrestling. These are moments in time involving one of the greatest of all time. R.I.P. Hulk Hogan. You will be missed.